After missing out on Marc Pubier and having a distinct lack of experience in the fullback areas, Wolverhampton Wanderers need at least 2 more fullbacks, in my personal opinion, to compete and push for that top half of the Premier League next season. So let's speak about 4 fullbacks, 2 right backs and 2 left backs that I think Wolves should be looking at this season. So let's get straight into this one. Now, the first fullback that I want to discuss is Nahuel Molina. Now, some of you may know him from winning the World Cup, scoring in the World Cup as well for Argentina, and generally being a really solid right back in La Liga for a number of years now. However, he is only contracted until 2027 and only made 17 starts last season, playing 30 games in total, however. Now, Atletico Madrid have obviously brought in Marc Pubier now, beaten Wolves to the signing of him. And I do think that opens up an opportunity for Molina to leave, because I do think Pubier has every intention of starting week in, week out for them. And I think that'll be Simeone's intention as well. Now, I like Molina for a lot of reasons. He's very, very experienced, 27 years old. He's nowhere near over the hill just yet. I really do like him. He's got a big physical frame, and he also has that ability to play both as a fullback. He's also stepped in as a centre-back in a back 3 at times as well, like Doherty has for Wolves. But also, he's played as a wing-back and a wide midfielder at times throughout his career as well. Now, one thing that I think is really interesting about Molina is his ability to go forward. He can cross the ball extremely well. Now, we know that Nelson Semedo was brilliant going forward, but crossing I wouldn't say was his best attribute. I'd say passing in advanced positions was, but crossing I would never say was Nelson Semedo's probably biggest strength. Now, he was injury-free last season, Molina, and ultimately being injury-free and only making 17 starts, I think says it all really, and how sort of Simeone feels about Molina currently and how they feel about him in Madrid. Now, one of the other things I love about Molina, and we'll just take a look here, is we'll go to his heat map. As you can see, we'll just zoom in on that for a second. And there is Nahuel Molina's heat map for last season. Now, as you can see, very, very advanced in these areas and loves to bomb on and get forward and is very comfortable in those advanced areas. So if we go and take a look at Nelson Semedo's heat map, as you can see, they're practically identical, really, if we just flick between the two so you can see. Nelson Semedo here, Nahuel Molina here. I think it's absolutely insane, to be honest, and I do think that Nahuel Molina would absolutely suit this Wolves squad down to a T. I don't think he'd be that expensive realistically either, especially not for a player of his pedigree, a player that's played at the levels he has, Champions Leagues, La Liga, played a lot in Argentina at the very high level as well, and of course has won the World Cup. So I think this is a very valid option. The only qualm I would have with Molina would potentially be his wages, but I don't think it would be that ridiculous. And if he was playing week in, week out, I'm sure he would probably be earning the wages that he'll be being paid by Wolves. That's definitely an option. Like I say, the only qualm with him is probably his wages and whether there'll be other clubs in for him. But let me know what you think about Molina, Wolves fans, because I think he would be a top deal. Now let's move over to a left wing-back target. Now, Samuel Lino is the most highly touted one at the moment. 20 to 25 million euros is the asking price now. That's not too expensive in my personal opinion. Again, a player who's got a lot of experience playing at the top level, has had numerous top games for Atletico Madrid and is just relatively consistent. As you can see by his last 12-month summary now, just slightly below a 7, but that's absolutely fine, especially when it comes to SofaScore's ratings. Anyway, now, I like Lino a lot. Obviously, he's played a lot higher up the pitch as a fullback. He reminds me similarly to Ait-Nouri. He's very technically secure. And defensive duels are probably not his biggest strength, but also they're absolutely by no means a weakness, and he's probably not any worse than Ait-Nouri in defensive duels, in my personal opinion. Now, one thing I love about Lino is his crossing and his ability to be direct and just want to take on his fullback, want to take on the right winger. And I just think he's so comfortable in those areas. Obviously signed for Atletico Madrid as a winger. His contract is up on the 30th of June in 2027. So, again, I think for that fee, really, 20 to 25 million is pretty fair. And I do think for a 25-year-old, I think it's absolutely brilliant. And I do think he could be one of them players that could come in and absolutely improve Wolves tenfold. Now, if we just take a look at his heat map as well, this is obviously from the Club World Cup, but if we just change that to La Liga, it is almost identical to Ryan Ait-Nouri's. I don't have that to show you right now, but if you go on SofaScore, you can check it out yourself. The heat maps are almost identical again. Ryan Ait-Nouri operated mostly past the halfway line in that sort of half space between the right-sided centre-back and the right-back. And that's where we see a lot of Samuel Lino's best football for Atletico Madrid, and I think he's top. Now, the one issue I do have with Samuel Lino is the fact that he is right-footed. Now, I'm not personally a fan of left-sided players that are right-footed if they're playing one of those full-back positions. If they're playing as a winger, it's not so much an issue. I do think that's one of the qualms I do have, although he is still comfortable on his left foot, and we've seen him use his left foot numerous times, and I'd actually argue that it's probably not too dissimilar to his right foot, but that's just something to be aware of, Wolves fans, if you do tend to bring him in. Now, I do like Lino. I think the fee's massive. The one thing I think we should also discuss as well is the club's link to him. The likes of Napoli, Nottingham Forest, Sporting Lisbon have all been highly linked to the Brazilian, and I do think that's one thing that potentially could hold Wolves back going into negotiations. But there is a good Brazilian core there, a lot of Portuguese-speaking footballers as well. So I do think that potentially could entice Lino, but I do think that's just one to watch out on because there is so many massive clubs, some of them European giants, looking for Lino's signature. So let me know what you think about Samuel Lino. I think he'd be a top signing. I'm just wary about his right foot, to be honest, but other than that, I'm a really big fan of him. Let me know what you think about Samuel Lino in the comments, and let's get into the next option. Now, moving back over to the right-hand side, I've gone for someone that I haven't seen linked to Wolves whatsoever, and someone that I really do think would be a really valid option for Wolves in Oscar Mingueza. Now, he came through at Barcelona during lockdown and during those sort of the 2020 period, and he did start, and he looked okay, he looked really decent in his first few games, and then ultimately after then, he was sort of phased out by the likes of Ronald Araujo coming in, and then a few more being signed, like Andreas Christensen, for example. Now, Oscar Mingueza, for me, is a top player, and he had a really, really good season last season again for Celta Vigo. Only one injury throughout the season, really, one main injury, and generally really, really consistent in a number of positions. He came through at Barcelona as a centre-half, as you just briefly mentioned there, being replaced by the likes of Araujo and stuff like that. But he's really comfortable in that right-sided centre-back position again, so if Wolves need that cover, they absolutely have that in him. However, he's also comfortable on both sides of a sort of back three or a back two. So you could see him as that perhaps left centre-back cover as well for Totti Gomez that we have sort of, a lot of Wolves fans clamouring for, really. I do think Oscar Mingueza is a really top signing. Now, his contract is up on the 30th of June 2026 as well. And I think a lot of clubs should be sniffing around him, to be quite honest. He's a real goal threat as well for someone that can play that right back, wing back or centre back positions. Last season, I think he managed 4 goals and 6 assists, which is absolutely ludicrous really for a player that, again, was playing as sort of an advanced fullback in actually a back three system as well. He played a lot last season. He also did play a lot off the left. As a left wing back and a right wing back last season for Celta Vigo, they play a back three, similarly to Wolves, hence why I think he would be another brilliant fit. Now, he's got real physical stature, he's 184 centimetres tall, and I really do like him as a player. Now, if we just take a look down here, you will see his heat maps again. Now, really impressive. So good in that right-sided channel, but also on the left, as you can see there. He's also really good at taking set pieces. He often takes the corners for Celta Vigo, and is just generally really technically secure for a player that ultimately came through as a centre-half. And I think if you want a two-footed player, a player that can play anywhere across the back four, he's not going to cost an absolute sort of bomb, really, especially with only 1 year left on his contract. Wolves have a really good relationship with Celta Vigo as well, obviously with the likes of Jorgen Strand Larsen and Fer Lopez, although their fans don't really have too much of a good relationship. Anyway, I do think he would be an absolutely brilliant signing, and I think he's one of these players that just loves to operate in either channel, and I think he would be really, really top for Wolves. I think in terms of wing-backs, we haven't seen him linked to Wolves, and obviously there may be a few reasons with regards to sort of his injury record, but he hasn't been injured too much this season. He's had a few previous injuries prior to this season, but ultimately I think Oscar Mingueza is a really top signing and a player, like I say, that I really like. I think his technical ability is brilliant. I think his crossing is really, really good. I think his ability to play on both sides massively helps him, and also his set-piece delivery, as I briefly touched on. So let me know what you think about Oscar Mingueza. This is one that I've been keeping an eye on for a long time, and especially since he left Barcelona, he's really flourished at Celta Vigo, so definitely keep an eye on Oscar Mingueza. And last but not least is young boys left-back, Yaan Hajam. Now, he has been absolutely top last season. Again, one injury, but he was absolutely brilliant throughout the season, consistently good for young boys, and generally, I think that's probably his sort of the biggest strength is his ability to sort of never really drop below a 7, a 7.5. He's just really, really consistent and a player that I really, really do like. Now, his age, 22 years old, may seem a bit raw. Obviously, when Wolves have got Bueno at the club as well, around a similar age, it's probably going to seem not like a sort of a signing that's going to make too much sense. But in terms of being able to bring him in, I reckon you could bring him in for around £7 million. so low risk. And obviously I think there will be a sell-on clause included if Wolves were to bring him in, similar to what Angers did with Ryan Ait-Nouri. But I do think he's top. Now obviously he is Algerian and left-footed as well, but if you do watch Hadjam, as lazy as a comparison as it may seem, he plays the game so similarly to Ait-Nouri. It's really strange to watch, to be honest. He does have a lot more physical stature than Ryan Ait-Nouri, which is one thing that I really like as well. I think it's always handy to have in those fullback positions, and something that I've been heavily critical of Hugo Bueno for not having, and hence the reason why I wouldn't start the season with him as the wing-back option. I think Wolves do need to do business in that area. I think Bueno's brilliant offensively, lacks physical stature defensively, and his defensive awareness, he often switches off at the back post or loses his marker, and that's something you just can't have in Premier League football, in my personal opinion. The same reason why I would loan Pedro Lima out this season. Now, if we look at his heat map as well, really similar again to Ryan Ait-Nouri. Absolutely brilliant footballer, and he's probably, he's been one of the top 3 performers this season, if not the top 2 performers for BSC Young Boys, and I think he's absolutely unbelievable to watch, and Wolves fans will have a bag of fun watching him. And if you go and watch compilations of him on YouTube, you'll just see what an absolutely fun player he is to watch. Now, he did score 2 goals last season from fullback, which is less than Ryan Ait-Nouri, but it's not too dissimilar. And at the end of the day, he contributes going forward more than that, really. And if we just look here, 6 clean sheets is all they had last season. But obviously, with an advanced fullback, that's always the risk that you run. 3 assists as well for him, and I think this is a really interesting one. 1.7 successful dribbles per 90 for a fullback, which we don't typically associate with fullbacks. We're starting to see it a lot more in the modern game, but you don't really typically associate that with fullbacks, especially in the highest level. So I think if he was to make that step up to the Premier League, I think he probably needs 6 months to adjust, but I think once he was there, I think he'd be really comfortable. Now, let me know what you think about Hadjam. Obviously, his contract's until 2028, so that might bump the fee up a little bit, and the fact there are a few clubs sniffing around him might bump it up. But I do think you could probably get him anywhere between the £7 to £10 million region. I think he'd be a really smart signing and a really astute signing on that left-hand side, and also provide competition to Bueno with them being similar ages. I do think that's one thing that is healthy to have in those fullback areas, and someone that I think would be a really smart signing that Wolves could probably, again, do similar to what they did with Ait-Nouri, build him into the squad, bed him in for the next 3 or 4 years and make him a really top talent. Let me know what you think about this. I think it'd be a really top deal, Wolves fans. Thank you all very much for watching this video. I've absolutely loved your support recently. It's been absolutely incredible. Some absolutely lovely comments, some amazing feedback as well to know what I can improve on to make these videos better for you. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, please like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already, because we're nearly at 1,000 subscribers. We are trying to get there before the Premier League season starts, but I actually think we could probably get there in the next 2 weeks, to be honest, with your support. It's been absolutely unbelievable, and I can't be more thankful. So thank you very much for watching this video. Make sure to comment below what you think about these players and give me some feedback again if you would like to, and I will see you in the next video.